Hey guys, welcome to Raw TV, Real and Willing Television. I'm Amanda Button.
And I'm Taylor Wilkerson. Tonight's episode is very special. It's called Our Stories. We're going to talk about our stories, we're going to give our testimonies, and hopefully it'll encourage you a little bit.
Yeah, it's something that God laid on our heart as something that we should share with you guys. It's going to be really powerful, and I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. So here's my story.
My mom got pregnant with me when she was 16 years old. My biological father was a drug dealer. When my mom's private Christian high school found out that she was pregnant, they kicked her out. After having me, her and my biological father decided to get married. He cheated on her the whole time, like they were dating, and my biological father and all of his friends would, get high and drink all the time and that kind of thing. And there was one night that everyone in the house was passed out. I'm assuming I was there as a baby asleep, and someone broke into the house because he was a drug dealer, so there was a lot of illegal activity going on, and she had to fight off the intruder. Eventually they divorced after a really brief marriage, and we moved in with my grandparents. I didn't have a father figure in my life. The last time I saw my biological father was when I was 5, and I was absolutely terrified of him. For some reason, the court allowed him visitation, even though he was a known convict and drug dealer. So I was forced to go over to his house several times, and my mom told me that I would come back and just lay on the floor for days crying and just in pain and physical pain, because I was so upset that I would actually have stomach aches and throw up and that kind of thing. I went through my childhood experiencing all of these ups and downs and just unstableness, and I'm very thankful that I had my grandparents, because they really provided that stability for me. My mom decided to go to college, and she worked full-time, and she was a full-time student and tried to be a full-time mom. She was really strong and a really strong role model for me, which I'm so thankful for. I really learned what it was to work hard and be driven. Even though I had experienced all that stuff as a kid, I didn't really realize the weight of it yet. I was a really outgoing kid. I loved making friends. I loved being with people. So the impact of all the stuff that happened when I was really young hadn't affected me yet. I started lashing out at anger a lot. A lot of anger issues ended up surfacing. I just wanted to be loved and accepted, because I was missing that from a father figure. Even though my mom got married to a wonderful guy who is my dad, I had really missed that for a lot of my life when it was really, really important. So I just started running to any guy that showed any interest. All my self-esteem was gone. I used to be really confident and outgoing, and then all of a sudden I had no friends. It was really, really bad. I had a panic attack one night, and I was like, God, I'm done with this. I've been living for myself for so long. I'm so angry. I'm so full of hatred. I hate everything, everyone. I have no friends. God, you have to do something with me, please, Lord. And that night I rededicated my life to the Lord, and it was amazing. It was like this burden lifted off of me. And I was so thankful, because I was like, oh yes, now I don't have to struggle with these issues that I've had. I forgave my biological father. I forgave all the people that had hurt me, and I was like, yes, I'm good now. Unfortunately, that naive thinking is what led to me hitting an even harder rock bottom. I ended up losing my virginity during that time, which came as a huge shock to me, because that was the one thing that I really hung on to, and that just threw me into a deep depression. An older married couple that I was kind of trying to confide in suggested that I needed therapy. At first I was like, oh, I don't need therapy, and I ended up trying out this Christian therapist, and it was actually one of the best decisions I've ever made. She really helped me through a lot. I was able to process things. So meeting with her, I was able to get my emotions under control and learn how to deal with them. On my lunch break one day, I called my mom, and I was like, I have to leave. I was like, I need to go to Australia. I need to get as far away from this place as possible. And my mom said, well, why don't you just try Southeastern for a semester? And I was like, okay, do it. I will move down there tomorrow. And the next day I enrolled. It was July and classes started in August. So every deadline was completely passed, but by the miracle of God, I was accepted and got in. As soon as I got to Southeastern, God put me in a dorm room with some of the most amazing women I've ever met. So I got involved with great people. I immediately got involved doing something I loved, Raw TV, which I love film, I love broadcast, and it was something I'd given up on, and God just gave me these things. God just did a 180 in my life, even though my past is horrible and I am ashamed of so many things that I've done. God has used it for good.
Well, that was Amanda's video, and Amanda, it really was just so inspiring. It's so cool to see where God has taken you from. I know you now, and it's the incredible person you are. It's pretty inspiring. But we had a few questions for you, kind of about your testimony, and mine is, you said that you rededicated your life to the Lord. Okay, so did you already? Were you a Christian growing up? Did you grow up in a Christian home? I didn't catch that part. Okay,
yeah, it wasn't something that I brought up, but I was raised in a Christian home. Like my mom, after her teenage years, rededicated her life to the Lord because she was raised in a Christian home. So it was just kind of like that spiral of being raised in it, but then turning away from it and then coming back.
Gotcha.
So.
And you said you lived with your grandparents. So did they really reinforce that for you? Were they Christians as well?
Yes, they also rededicated their lives to the Lord. Like it was a lot of like we all knew about God, and then at some point walked away and then came back. So but I throughout my whole life, my grandparents were like hardcore believers. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Are your grandparents still in your life today?
Yes, they're very important to me.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to see them this weekend.
Oh. I have a question. Like, this second time in your testimony, when you said the second time you kind of like went back into the world, like, was your mom aware of everything that was going on? Like, did you talk to her? Did you have that relationship with her?
Even though like me and my mom are very, very close, like I would describe us as really close, especially since she had me so young. But I internalized everything. So everything that I was struggling with, I never said out loud, especially when I was younger. I didn't even really know what I was dealing with. And so I just internalized everything. I didn't really reach out to anybody. And then the second time, I was just so embarrassed and ashamed of what I was doing because I knew what I was doing was wrong. And I was hurting so much, I was just too embarrassed to talk to her, you know. So.
And one thing I thought was cool is you got adopted by your dad and in 4th grade.
Yeah.
So like for someone who hasn't experienced that, is it hard like growing up without a dad and then suddenly having a man in your life, like a father figure?
It was hard, and it was weird because I think I grew up really fast because of everything I experienced, and so then when I got a dad again, it was like he came in with like rules and that kind of thing, and so it was like, I'm not used to this, like I have to do the dishes now? What? So like it was just hard adjusting to, I mean, it's hard adjusting to like living with anyone, but then especially them being like a parent, it's really hard, so.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your view of men has just been skewed because of the mishaps throughout your life.
Yeah.
What is it like now dating?
Well, dating for my whole life was the worst idea ever. Like I never should have been in a relationship, ever. And it wasn't till I came to Southeastern and God really did a 180 in my life, literally like transformed me. Like, you know, the whole state, like renewing of your mind, that is what happened to me. Like I'm no longer the person I was. And now I do have a boyfriend, and it is the best thing that's ever happened to me because he's such a great man, and I'm finally the type of woman that can be in that kind of healthy relationship.
Good.
So.
That's pretty cool.
But anyways, guys, thank you for all your questions and for listening. And now we're gonna go to Phil with his story.
In high school, I was a runner, a track star, if you would, and I was graduating my senior year with a scholarship to go to school. Halfway through my freshman year, I was injured with a stress fracture in my knee, and I was not able to continue to run. I had lost my scholarship, but finished out my second semester. During that time, I was depressed. I had no idea what I was going to do now. Running was my life. I turned to drugs. For the next 3 years, I went down the path. I remember one night I came home and my mom was waiting for me. It was about 4 in the morning. I was out of it. She told me we would talk in the morning about my problems, but I wasn't ready to face them. I grabbed a backpack and I headed out the door. Finally, I came back, and that's when I knew I had to make a change. In 2008, I decided to join the military. When I joined the Marine Corps, it was one of the best things I'd ever done. I finally had a new purpose, a new reason to be me. I was 21 years old when I went into the Marine Corps. I'd only been there for about 7 days before we had detained someone. It was a young 19-year-old Afghani. And after 3 days of having him, we had no reason to keep him. So we released him back out into the village where we were staying. About 30 minutes later, we heard an explosion right outside of our walls. I stepped outside to look around to see what it was all about, but everybody was confused and nobody knew exactly what was going on. About 5 seconds later, a mortar round landed about 20 feet from me. I turned to try to get back inside of the compound that we were staying in, but before I could, another mortar landed about 15 feet away from me, and then another, and then another, and then another. My friend came out of the doorway that I was just looking at with my arm reached out, and I couldn't move. I was absolutely frozen. He came out, grabbed my hand, and pulled me in. There was another guy still out there. We didn't know who he was, didn't know his name, didn't know where he came from, but he was laying on the ground, and he wasn't good. We had to carry this guy. Never met him a day in my life, but he was completely unconscious, covered in blood, stripped of his clothes, and we were carrying him on a stretcher to the helicopter. I remember his body was limp, and we were going over these hills and trying to get to the helicopter where it had landed, and his right arm had fallen off of the stretcher. I remember reaching it up and putting it back on there. The only thing I saw was a USMC tattoo on the inside of his left forearm and a gold wedding band on his ring finger. As everyone tried to keep him alive, it wasn't working. I remember sitting there, looking down at him and praying. Later that evening, we found out that he didn't make it. After I got back with my unit, we finished out the remainder of our deployment and returned in December of 2009 to the States. As soon as I got back, nothing had changed. I continued to abuse alcohol instead of drugs. During that time, I began to pray. I began to pray that I would find the woman of my dreams. Before I went on my second deployment in January 2011, I went home and just happened to keep in touch with an old friend, a girl that I dated my freshman year of college. And she changed my life. I got out in March and I got married in April. And during that summer was when I was trying to find out where I wanted to go to school. I wanted to be in broadcasting and television. That summer I had applied to several schools, a broadcasting school and a couple of local schools in my town, but none of them felt right. Until my wife suggested that Southeastern University had a really good broadcasting program. I just felt that this was the direction I needed to go. I remember the day I came home from school, I told my wife, I said, "You're never gonna believe it. The first thing we did today was pray." And I haven't had anybody pray with me in years. I had kept my family at a distance. Even my wife didn't know my whole story. But my first day, I had somebody praying for me. And that made all the difference in the world. I've been going to Southeastern for 2 semesters, and they have been some of the best months of my life. I feel whole, and it is not that I'm here, but it's that I'm in the place that I need to be. And through all the experiences that it took me to get here, every one of them was worth it to get this, to be right here in this moment.
All right, guys, first I just want to start off by saying thank you, Phil, for serving our country. I don't think any of us can even wrap our minds around all of that. So we do want to ask you some questions. How involved were you in the church before you ended up losing your scholarship for track?
Very involved.
Yeah.
I grew up, my family was very involved in the church. My father was a youth pastor before I was born, but they my family was a huge staple in my life, a stronghold, and the church was my life. Youth group events. I actually played as a high schooler in the praise and worship band, and so I loved it. I mean, throughout high school was an awesome Christian. That's what I tried to be, was an awesome Christian. It was not a problem, you know. I loved Jesus and he loved me back.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a drastic change, like being so, you know, on fire for the Lord, and then like in one moment you injure yourself and you just get so depressed. Like, that's a really drastic change, and I bet that was very hard on you.
You know, and it really caught me off guard. I had never experienced something like this in my life. I had never had something for so long just swept away from me, and then I was almost just stumbling through the world, not knowing where to go, and the first thing that came, I jumped on the wagon. And that's where, you know, I became confused on who I was and where my purpose was.
Yep, completely understand.
How did you get involved with drugs, though? Like, how did you find that to be your leeway? Like, how was that exposed?
You know, it kind of makes sense as a runner's high. I used to get that amazing feeling of competition. I loved competing, and I loved running and track and field. And to replace that was almost the only thing I could find.
Yeah.
And I also, just like running, took it on full stride. Like, I loved it so much. My whole life was involved in it. And then when I made the transition into drugs, I took it on full swing. My whole life was involved in it. I was completely wrapped.
Wow. But then you decided you want to make a change, so you joined the Marines, and you had that crazy story. I'm sure that was so terrifying. But I noticed when you came back, you turned to alcohol right after. Mm-hmm. Why do you think you did that?
Again, I was looking for something to fill the void. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what I had experienced.
Yeah.
I had no idea how to handle it. And obviously, being in the military, you don't talk about it. I mean, they encourage you, they want you to, but us, it's, oh no, I'm fine, don't worry about it, brush it off.
Yeah.
But of course, that's not what happens.
Yeah, wow.
That's intense. I want to know how you came back and you're like, you know, Lord, I want to find the woman of my dreams. And that woman of your dreams ended up changing everything for you. How did she make such an impact in your life?
Well, I remember before my second deployment, I had prayed. I'd been dating several women, and they were all great relationships, but I just kept breaking them off. I just wasn't the woman that I wanted to marry and I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And that's what I felt would be a stronghold in my life, is if I had someone to lean against, to be with me in every stride. And that was when it just all happened in a moment.
That's amazing.
And
sweet.
Cool. Well, Phil, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
But now we are going to go to Angie's story. So check out this video.
The environment that I grew up in, statistically, I should be either pregnant, experienced probably 2 abortions, high school dropout, and probably abusing drugs. I came from a Dominican family that was really structured and focused on keeping me sheltered from that environment. My mom brought us to church every Sunday, yet my father refused to attend. As I was learning about God, my dad was abusing alcohol really bad, and it was really intense. I witnessed him abusing my mom, verbally, physically, and he would abuse me. My brothers never experienced it. My brother was always away at college, and my little brother was always sleeping. Every time my dad would come home drunk, my little brother was always knocked out. So I kind of felt like that was God just keeping him sheltered, you know, keeping his eyes closed not to witness all that, because it definitely left an impact on me and who I am today. In high school, things were getting so bad with my father and his drinking habits that it created a lot of stress for me. I guess like the stress started building up, where I decided to experiment. I was curious, exhausted mentally, started experimenting with boys, with weed, with alcohol, skipping school. I was really going off track. I played like every sport in the book in high school, so my athletic director from my high school reached out to me because he saw how bad I was either stressed out, or I remember he had called me into his office and he had asked me everything, like, you know, Angie, what's going on? And I expressed to him, you know, like the situation at home. He told me, Angie, you know, you just really need to find your leeway. You got to find your light. You got to find something that, you know, keeps you away from that, and you need to grow in God. I'm like, well, you know, I go to church every Sunday. What do you mean? Like, I am growing in God. But realistically, I wasn't. You know, I was still living my life the way I was. He told me to find my leeway, and my leeway, something that I've been addicted to since a child, was basketball. When everybody was either doing their club nights, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was out in my driveway shooting free throws. When my dad would be away, would be at his friend's house getting wasted, I'd be waiting for him in the driveway shooting, waiting to see if he got home soon. My senior year, I had committed to Southern Mississippi, which is a Division I institution for athletics. I was set to go. I was like, man, I'm about to leave Florida. I'm gonna be able to have my own space. I'm gonna be able to just focus on me and be away from all these problems. But when I thought about it, I didn't feel right. I didn't feel at ease. And at the time, I just knew I couldn't leave my mom in the situation that she was in with my father, especially because I was my #1 fan from the beginning. So I had decommitted, and it was a big disappointment, and I didn't know where I was gonna go. So I was talking to my mom, like, Mom, I really don't know where I'm gonna go. Like, she was like, Ange, why don't you try a Christian school? At the time, I looked at her, I'm like, Mom, are you crazy? Like, what do I look like going to a Christian school? And she was just like, yeah, you should try it, Ange. You know, I think it would be a really good look. You know, you can grow spiritually, you can learn more. And my mom she's always been persistent on that. And then my mentor in high school, my athletic director, he recommended Southeastern University. And I was like, nah, coach, I can't do it. Can't go to a Christian school. He said, Angie, I really think you're gonna like this. You know, I feel like you're gonna be able to expand in a smaller community because you have a big personality. And I said, all right, coach, I'll go just because of you. And that's the kind of relationship we had. He passed away 2 years ago. But I told him, yeah, I'll try it out. And I came to the athletic visit. I made the basketball team, and I fell in love with the campus. The years that I've been here now at Southeastern, I'm about to be a senior. And when I tell you it's been an emotional, spiritual roller coaster, a battle at the beginning. I learned stuff about myself that I never even realized. I met people that taught me that I need to stop relying on myself. And growing up in the environment that I did, growing up in the household that I did, I built this tough demeanor. And it's because I had to be tough, you know? I was like, Angie, you got this. You made it this far. You, Angela, you made it this far. So I was like, I got this, you know? And to come here and to just be completely broken down, I felt like the weight just built so much on me, and I lost it. And to have people remind me that I can't put it on me, I have to put it on God, and I have to have faith. It was hard at first, but once I realized that that's truth, and I prayed every day, and I put all my faith and all my weight on Him, everything started falling into place. And there's no plan B. It's every day how I live my life. I just learned this the other day. Every day how I live my life, you know, is how He wants it and how it should be. I know my testimony isn't over, because it's never over, and I know I'm still growing. There's a lot of things that I still struggle with, but from where I've came from and from what I was, there's definitely a difference.
What an incredible story, Angie. Seriously, thank you so much for sharing all that with us. I mean, it's so cool to see how, like, in the beginning, like, you're supposed to be statistic, and you're not.
Yeah.
And like, that's just so powerful. I have a question for you about your athletic director, right? It seemed like he played a pretty constant role in your life. What impact did he have in your life?
Coach Leonard was he definitely played that father figure that I didn't have at home. He's the one that introduced me to Southeastern. He's the one that told me to stay consistent with sports, and especially basketball, because I was good at it. And he kept reminding me that with everything that was happening at home, that I had to stay positive and I had to keep moving forward. And by me playing basketball, he called it my ticket. He said that playing basketball was going to get me to school, and from school was going to get me a career, and from there it would just continue growing, you know. And especially going to Southeastern, like, I was able to grow spiritually too, you know. Yeah. So he definitely left an impact to me.
He was right. It was your ticket.
Yeah, that's how you got here. That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you mentioned that you experienced physical abuse from your father, and I cannot imagine how hard that is. how did you handle that as a girl and as a daughter? How did you handle being physically abused?
Well, to be honest, during everything, I was really confused because I didn't know how, like, my own dad would beat me like a man, you know. And I was confused that my mom wasn't leaving him, why we couldn't leave and just let him be and let him fall short, you know. I was confused, I was hurt, I was angry. It got to the point that as I got older, I got so fed up that I started retaliating to my father. And we would literally, like, I was ready to just swing on him. And it sucked because growing up in the culture that I did and just knowing right from wrong, I knew I had to be obedient to him regardless because he was my father. And that hurt and it sucked. But I still did it. And that's why I kept my mouth shut. That's why I didn't talk. And that's why I just try to find ways to not be home all the time, you know. And I wasn't able to talk to my mother about it. She kind of just would yell at him, and then now that I got older, we can look back on it and me and her talk about it, you know.
Yeah.
And she's open with it, and I'm more open with things that would happen, and it's bringing me more of an understanding why she never left him and stuff. So.
Yeah. You said looking back on it, you and your mom are able to talk about it now.
Yeah.
So also, like, looking back on it, do you think that if you would have spoken up to someone, like an adult, like you kind of spoke up to your coach, do you think it would have helped you more in that situation? Would you encourage someone in a situation of abuse to speak up?
Yeah, I feel like I fell short in that end because, in a sense, basketball was having me run away from it because I would use that to fill that void. But just by that's a prime example. By me reaching out to my athletic director, he opened such a better perspective to me. He gave me that push to keep moving forward and to establish more stability in my life. And I feel like if I would have done that in a long, even if it was an aunt, even if it was my aunt that I'm super close to, even if it was my older brother, even though he didn't witness it, like somebody could hear me and somebody can encourage me and to keep me mentally stable during that entire process.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that is so great, Angie. Thank you so much for sharing, and we'll be right back after this.
We love getting to share our lives and our stories with you, but now it's your turn. We want to hear from you. We know that there are so many stories of God's love and power that go unspoken. So if you feel like the Lord is leading you to share your story as a means to minister to others, please share it with us. Find us on Facebook and upload a brief video of yourself explaining your story. And if you're a little camera shy, you can always share it via email along with a photo to rawtv@seu.edu. And who knows, maybe we'll invite you on the show to share it with us in person. We look forward to hearing from you.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Raw TV. Our stories, I hope they have encouraged you. This is just part one, so I hope you turn into part two where you'll get to hear my story and Taylor's.
Yeah, we have both Taylors.
Both Taylors.
That'll be fun. So if you guys have a question, comment, or suggestion, make sure that you send us a message on Facebook, tweet at us, or send us an email. And as always, don't forget to
Live it raw.